Yo, 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 what up, Mrs. Zoo Nation, aka Savage Sharma Jones and Rafa, and welcome to an episode of the very first episode of Deck Building Tuesdays. Today we have Gunningcoleo High Roller for standard format. If you like videos like this and want to see more, like, comment, subscribe. Today I'm going to be giving you one of my, of course, most favorite clan of the game, Mega Colony, which will be Gunningcoleo. Today we're gonna be doing like one of the more focused. I want to say this is like between competitive and semi-competitive. Like I want to say it's competitive though, but like it kind of depends on how you look at it. Because it is very high roller, but it actually does work in a more competitive scene. Played with this something a similar build to this, like around regionals. I did pretty good. I could have done better, but I think the major issue was a Yuga, so that was a major issue. But outside of that, I'll be basically tell you like the deck profile itself, some combos, and I'll at the same time tell you like the prime, like the strengths and weaknesses of like the deck and whatnot. So, since we have like a long thing to go, here we go. So, what we're going to be focusing on this deck is more of a high roller style. So, what I mean by that is we're either going to be killing them off on second grade 3 turn, or we're more likely going to lose. This is because we're going to be doing like a lot of discarding, and we're going to be doing like a lot of we're going to be doing like a lot of forceful plays and everything else. So, starting with grade zeros, we have, of course, a starter. We have 17 in total. One being a starter, the 16 being a critical, being the triggers and whatnot, the usual stuff. So we're running 4 heals as normal. We're running 5 draws, 4 of them being the draw PGs, and we're running 7 criticals. The reason why we're running an extra draw in here, and the reason why I didn't go 6 draw, 6 criticals, is because I want to keep as much criticals into the deck as possible for more of the pressure base. But at the same time, we need like a lot of cards in hand because, again, like I said, we're going to be doing like a lot of draw power stuff. And I mean, not a draw power stuff. We're going to be doing like a lot of discarding. So, yeah, that's the thing. And seeing that Gun and Kaleo does have triple drive and possible quad drive, we don't really need to focus too much on the drawing because that triple drive and or quad drive is going to help us out in the long run. So, with that being said, let's move on to the grade ones. We are running 12 grade ones in total. So, the only place that we're going to be running is Machining Hornet, which has an on play skill of look at the top 6, choose a grade 3 and put it into your hand. If it's on the rear guard circle, you put it into the soul. Otherwise, it's on the vanguard circle. Nothing happens after that. Um, since we're going to be running like 11 grade 3s, you're going to be hitting them very often depending on how many are in the deck. And then at the same time, if you're doing like your mulligan and everything like that, you don't really have to worry if you don't have any grade 3s in hand, or if you don't have, or if you only have one grade 3 in hand, because like this and machining mantis is basically going to be there. So if you don't have a grade 3 in hand, as long as you have Hornet and Mantis in hand, you should be okay with not having any grade 3s. But again, they're not guaranteed. Then there's 2 grade 1s that we run in 3 copies of. The first one being Phantom Black. This is going to be part of your finisher combo. And what he does is um, after when he boosts, you discard a card. He gets +6, and your opponent can't call any normal units from their hand. There's going to be more to the combo, so I'm not going to really go into much until we start going to the combo side of the video. Next, we have 3 butterfly officers when on place. a rest a unit, you choose one of your units, it gains plus 10k, and at the end of the turn, that unit goes into the soul, and you get the soul charge, not soul charge, counter charge one. Now, I do believe that if the unit goes into the soul before the end phase, you do get the counter charge. So, that is going to come up in a little bit when I talk about like the grade twos. So, honestly, you should be able to get the counter charge back. Last but not least is also like a tiny tech though, but it actually helps a lot more than you think. Brony jerk. He has two rear guard skills. The first one being when placed, use Soul Chart, Soul Blast one, and his unit gets plus 6. Until the end of the turn, you put the top card of your opponent's deck into the drop zone, and if it's a grade 1 or greater, you Soul Charge one. Then, the second ability is when it boosts a unit that attacks a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, you discard a card from your hand and your opponent chooses a card from his or her hand and discard it. So, with both Phantom Black and Brony Jerk, you are definitely discarding cards in order to get certain effects off. This is one of the major reasons why we're running multiple draw triggers and everything. And seeing that again, we have triple drive. It shouldn't really matter. On to the grade twos. So, with the grade twos in mind, we have 10 in total. So the first four is going to be Machining Mantis, which I explained earlier. It's kind of similar to Hornet, but the only difference is he's an on-play skill. You counterblast one, you look at the top six, get a grade 3, and then shuffle your deck. Um, it's up to one, and then you get plus 6. So he gets plus 6 for the turn, regardless if you get the grade 3 or not, which is actually pretty good. And then there's like nothing much else. Like I said before, you have him and Hornet into the hand, you're gonna be okay. Next you have well dressed mutant Algo Billbug. I think that's how you say it right. So during the battle that this unit attacked the Vanguard, if your opponent's card was put into the deck into the drop zone this turn, when your opponent would call Guardians from his or her hand, he or she must call 2 or more cards at the same time. I don't run too many of this. It's a good card to run. You don't really want to see too many of it because you're not always going to be milling your opponent 90 at every turn. There's going to be some times where you don't mill your opponent at all, and that does become an issue. This is because either you're not riding into Gunningcoleo or you don't really have another card that's going to be in the deck. However, our grade 2 lineup has the MVP card of the deck. And this card is called Spear Attack Mutant Megalar Lancer. I'm gonna just call it Megalar Lancer. So I think that's how you say it correctly. So anyway, when he attacks a Vanguard, this unit gets plus 2k to the end of the battle for each of your opponent's rested rear guards. Then you put a rear guard into your soul, and your opponent cannot intercept for the rest of the turn. You're not necessarily using it for the power boost or for preventing your opponent from intercepting. You're using it because it puts a unit into the soul. Because we need a lot of grade 3s in the soul, and this is the fastest way to do it. Now, honestly, there's like I wish there was like a faster way of doing it. There used to be a faster way to do it in the premium aspect of it because we're running this exact same deck. Instead of running him, you'll be running a card called Machining Armor Beetle. Basically when he's placed on Vanguard or Rear Guard, you choose one of your rear guards put into your soul, and you choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and it cannot stand. The difference is you don't have to wait to battle phase in order to use Armor Beetle skill, but you do have to wait battle phase using Mega Large Lancer skill. And seeing that Armor Beetle is a premium only card, we do not have access to it. So this is the next best thing, and aka the MVP of the deck. So, with that being said, let's get on to the grade threes, our final thing. We have 4 Gunningcoleo, which is the whole point of the deck. So his first skill is when placed, this unit gets plus 5k and a plus drive until the end of the turn. Then you put the top card of your opponent's deck into the drop zone, and if it's a grade 3 or greater, he gets another drive and another plus 10k. His second ability is Soul Blast in a grade 3. Put the top card of your opponent's deck into the drop zone, and your opponent cannot call the same grade as that card from his or her hand until the end of the turn. So, basically on place, you're guaranteed a triple drive. You'll every once in a while get a quad drive, but his secondary skill is part of the major reason why Megalar Lancer exists, and I will get to that in a minute. But just know that both of these effects are very powerful. Um, and it's very essential to the deck. So he is a combo piece. All the grade threes in his deck is a combo piece to your winning image, or I guess your finisher, whatever you want to call it. I think winning image is a little bit weebish, but anyway. Next up, you have Cyclomatooth. Cyclomatooth has a Vanguard and Rear Guard skill called when it attacks, you counterblast one and Soul Blast. It gets plus 10 to the end of the turn. Then you put the top card of your opponent's deck into the drop zone. If it was a grade 1 or greater, it gets a plus critical. Then it has a secondary skill when rolled upon. Your opponent chooses a card from his or her hand and discards it, and one of your vanguards gets plus 5k to the end of the turn for each of that card's grades. Now, you could go one or two ways of riding him first and then Gunningcoleo, or just trying to use him on the rear guard circle. But he's definitely a finisher piece, mainly because he not only mills your opponent, but you also get a possible critical at the same time. And seeing that you not only have a way to counter charge, but we don't really have that many cards that counter blast, it's very easy to use a skill, and you don't really have to worry about not having enough counter blast to use a skill or anything else like that. Again, Gunningcoleo doesn't really use a counter blast, so that's a huge plus too. And last but not least, the finisher to every single Mega Colony deck, regardless if it's premium or standard. Three Death Warrant Ant Lions. So when it attacks, Soul Blast one grade 3, discard 2 cards in your hand until the end of that battle. This unit gets plus 10k plus a critical, and your opponent cannot call Sentinels from hand to the Guardian Circle. So, having both Antlion and having Cyclomatooth all in one field is actually pretty devastating, especially if you have Phantom Black, because you're hitting your opponent with multiple criticals, and you have the ability to, you're hitting them with multiple criticals, and you also have the ability of preventing your opponent from, using guarding with stuff. Put this all together with Gunningcoleo, and you have a winning strategy right then and there. Hence why I call it the high roller strategy. Now, with that being said, now that we got through all the cards, now let's get to a few combos. Alright, so basically the whole point of the deck is to use Gunningcoleo's second ability while attacking with both Cyclomatooth and or Antlion at the same time. You also want to have Phantom Black because it creates more guard restricting. Now, not saying that you can't use something like for a prime example like Aloe Billbug, for a prime example, like using her in Phantom Black, or not even saying that you can't use Brony Jerk and using boosting Antlion and or Cyclomatooth, but it can necessarily happen. So, your first combo that you want to do is riding Gunningcoleo while you have a grade 3 in Soul. Um, this basically requires you to have two grade threes in the soul, which again, Megalar Lancer coming in. Your first grade 3 turn, you'll have a grade 3 onto like the side, you'll put it into the soul. In or using what's her face? Using Butterfly Officer as well. You basically have this thing where you have two grade 3s in the soul, and you can use either Antline or Cyclomatu's effect to good use. Now, when you use Gunningcoleo's ability, his second one that prevents your opponent from like calling cards from their hand, the magic number is 0. So here's the thing: when you use Gunningcoleo's first skill, the magic number is 3 or higher. However, if it's not a grade 3 or higher, if it's like, let's say, a grade 0, the magic card is heal triggers. At the same time, when it comes to his secondary skill, the magic number is grade zeros. That way, if you attack with Antline and you attack with Phantom Black, you have this thing where they can't block at all. They have to have some type of special way of blocking because they can't use Sentinels from hand, and they can't use Phantom Black prevents them from using um normal units, which is grade ones or higher. Gunningcoleo, because they prevent them from using zeros, they just have to take the attack unless they have enough cards to intercept, which will intercept their high attack. Now, because you're doing this after drive checks, and let's say that you didn't get any like extra 10k in a crit or anything else like that, it's very hard for them to do it. I feel like that a few ways that they could is like, let's say you're going against Nubatama, they have Protect 2 on the field, and they block with like one of the tokens from behind. It's a possibility for them to block all that because there's no guard restriction when it comes to guarding from from when it comes to intercepting or anything else like that. So with that being said, yeah, that's kind of one of the major things. I think Nubatama also has another one when it comes with Magatsu Storm using his like other ability where you counterblast one, retire 2 units, and um it basically gives him like his own perfect guard, his own nullification, I guess. The second combo is to do something similar, but when you ride the first time, you ride into Cyclomatooth. That way, you can still use Cyclomatooth's ability. You can still mill and possibly be hitting your opponent with like an extra critical or anything else like that. But the main reason you want to do that is so when you ride into Gunningcoleo, you have the ability to force your opponent to discard before you use your opponent's skill. Now the discard says anything, and you get 5k. The Vanguard gets 5k depending on how much that grade is. So if they ditch a grade 1, he gets an extra 5k. They ditch a grade 3, he gets an extra 15, or anything else like that. 90% of the time that I played this deck, everybody is always ditched a grade 0 because they don't want you getting that extra attack power, on top of Gun and Kaleo. At the same time, it's a plus because then they're taking away like a lot of shield just so you don't really plus that often. That's one less card in their hand, and at the same time, unless if it's like a vanilla, a vanilla draw trigger, then you kind of sort of get rid of some of their best shields. I remember even seeing somebody one time ditching one of their perfect guards because they're like, "Oh, I know you have the antline in the hand, so might as well." So honestly, there's like a lot of plus to it. On top of that, you have Brony Jerk, which is even more hilarious because you discard a card and then you you discard a card and then at the same time they have to discard one too. So now you force them to discard 2 cards from the hand, or even more if you have both of your Brony Jerks in hand. So yeah, that's a thing. So one of the things that I like about Brony Jerk is that he's a good alternative to Phantom Black. So if you don't have Phantom Black on the field but you have Brony Jerk, he's like the next best thing. Because like let's say you try to do antlion skill when he boosts him, and let's say that the Gunningcoleo prevented you from using zeros, first they gotta you discard a card and they have to discard first. Then you discard two more cards and you soul blast a grade three, and now they can't use sentinels and all this other stuff. So, you can get a lot of people with that, and the same thing goes with the Cyclomatube combo because they not only have to mill, but they also have to discard. So that's a thing too. And you get like a possible crit, but if you don't, and they have and they and, they mill a grade zero, that's a good thing as well. So, um, overall, those are the pretty decent combos that you want to deal with. Um, you want to make sure that Megalar Lancer puts like a grade three into the thing. You want to make sure that you search out for as many grade threes as possible with both Machining Hornet and Machining Mantis. And you just want to overall just like wreck your opponent's shit with all the guard restrictions. So the reason why that's basically the reason why I call it a high roller build because it's not always guaranteed, and one little slip up could kind of tear the whole deck apart. So with that being said, I guess the strengths of the deck, in my honest opinion, will be that it has a lot of guard restriction. It has a very clear plan to go. It's very focused and honestly, milling your opponent, even if you like lose the battle, you still annoyed your opponent enough. And you mill sometimes milling triggers is also a plus as well, because that means one less trigger in your deck and one less 15k shield, possible 20k shield, possible draw trigger that you don't really have to deal with. Or even if you're going against God Hand, front triggers and whatnot. That's basically one of the major pros about the deck and everything else. Grade three searchability. There's like it's just overall like way better than it was when Mega Colony came out like a year ago in a standard format. The problem, which is its cons, is the deck works against itself. The mill mechanic itself is more of an RNG factor, which means that everything is randomized. Yeah, randomized. So that means that you're not always going to mill a grade three when you ride in a Gunningcoleo. Sometimes it's a grade two or a grade one or even a grade zero. Even though the grade zero is kind of a plus that first time, but I want to say it's that second time. Like I've had matches where I ride into Gunningcoleo. I get a zero off of their mill, but when I use a second ability, the mill is a grade three. And unless you're going against Murakumo, the grade three doesn't matter. I mean, like the best thing about milling your opponent's grade three in Murakumo is you don't have to deal with Shiryuki. That's the only good thing about it. But outside of that, sometimes you won't be milling the right thing. And while you use, like, let's say, for example, Cyclomatooth, you'll mill a grade zero. Yeah, you milled one of your opponent's, triggers. So again, that's one lit trigger in the deck. But you also got to remember that sometimes your opponent can't block it. They're at 4 damage. You definitely need that critical to make it to 6 with like a possible like miracle heal from them. And honestly, sometimes you just mill the trigger instead. And while again, milling the trigger sometimes is good because it's one less trigger out the deck, you also gotta remember that they're at 4 damage. You wanted them to get to 6, but they're at 5th damage instead. So they kind of survived all that, sadly. Sometimes they just rather take the hit and all this other stuff. Like you could have finished the game right there, but you didn't, and that's the thing. But outside of Bermuda format that we're about to get, because like let's be real, that's gonna be every deck's con, is the fact that Riviera exists. I feel like the worst deck to play against with this is Nubatama because Nubatama would discard most of your hand, and which means you'll be discarding most of your pieces because, like, let's be real, this is more of a second grade three turn win deck, if that makes any sense. And it would just overall ruin your strategy. I also do feel like that because everybody's starting to pick up the leaders now, the leaders is kind of sort of like another one, but it doesn't hurt as much. I would say that if you play against the leaders, don't do the thing where you ride into Tooth and then ride into Gunningcoleo because they'll just delete it. You'll ride into Gunningcoleo and Tooth's on ride skill will lose effect because it didn't exist at that particular time. But with that being said, the deck really doesn't cost that much. I want to say that you'll be spending like maybe 100-ish type for it. Kind of average, probably even less. And the only reason why it's that high in price is because Machining Mantis is stupidly high in price. Still, I think it like last time I checked, it was like 10. It might have went down a little bit, and the draw trigger PGs, of course, because they're like 5 10s right now. So yeah, outside of those two cards and possibly Gunning Kaleo, which is like 13 something dollars a piece, the deck as a whole doesn't really cost that much. I want to say like you'll probably be spending like maybe 80-ish or anything else like that. But with that being said, thank you for showing up to Deck Building Tuesdays. Next week, I do not know what deck I'll be doing. I might try to do like a premium deck. I might even do like premium Mega Colony. But also, I am taking requests and everything else like that. So, with that being said, my name is Mrs. Z Nation, aka Savage on the Joe Giraffa, signing out.